What's going on, everyone? So today's video, we're actually going to be talking about well, first of all, I'm kind of late to the party talking about this, but we're going to talk about how to play Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, Starfinder, any of those kinds of awesome tabletop role-playing games in an online virtual format. Now, there's plenty of ways you can do this. There's a lot of different softwares and a lot of just kind of things that you probably already have in your computer or on your phone that you could actually utilize in order to play these games. That is going to really help enhance your experience in playing in an online format. Now, it's still going to be a little bit different, and before I get too deep into this, if this kind of stuff you already kind of know about, feel free to check out some of the other tutorials on the channel. I'm totally fine by that. I understand that this is kind of redundant for some of you guys, but for a lot of us, this is actually something that even while COVID's kind of been going on, you know, this kind of stuff is kind of needs to be said, and it's going to be very helpful for some people. So make sure you check out some of the other tutorials if this is kind of redundant for you. But for those of you who stayed over here for this part, we're going to be talking about all the different kind of cool free ways you can actually play D&D in an online format, or again, Starfinder, Pathfinder. Whenever I just say D&D, just think every tabletop RPG. That's my D&D is the one in my head, as per usual. But we're going to actually talk about like just the different kinds of ways we can play for free. There's a lot of different softwares out there that you can actually utilize for voice, whether or video, or just play by text, whatever the case may be. So make sure you stick around, and let's actually get into the video. Alright, so you stuck around long enough to hear me talk about how to play in an online format. So we're actually going to jump back and forth a couple of times here on the computer, back to this kind of format, and just kind of talk about different ways we can do this. Now, one of the main kind of easiest ways, and we're actually going to kind of go through this in kind of a tiered system. We're going to talk about free, easy, really minimal setup, to more complex, to maybe something that's going to cost you some money, and kind of go along that way. So if you guys want to skip to just more of the virtual tabletop kind of stuff, I'll put timestamps for different sections depending on what you're kind of looking for. If you're looking for free virtual tabletop stuff, I'll have a link for the Roll20 stuff, and then if you want stuff that's going to cost you a little bit of money but really enhance your experience, I'll have links for that down in the timestamps in the description. But first, we're going to talk about play by text. So play by text is generally what it kind of sounds like. You play Dungeons & Dragons in a kind of text format. Now, this is also kind of the more flexible options to kind of play the game in an online format, because you don't necessarily all need to be huddled around your computers constantly typing out in a chat message. You can actually play, you know, when you get a free chance at lunch or whatever like that. It's a really kind of great way to kind of continue that immersive role-playing experience even while you're not at your table. Or you can actually, I've seen a lot of people use play by text for a lot of RP stuff away from the game, so that when they come back to the game, they've actually kind of developed a little bit more rapport with characters and storytelling, and have learned a little bit more about the world. So it can be utilized actually outside of just the online format. But for a lot of people, this is the way that people play. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of applications you can use in order to be able to play this way. One of them is Discord. Now, Discord's really good at a lot of things and not so great at some other things, but for the one thing that they're really good at text, and they're really good at voice typically. So those are the kind of ones that Discord's the one I would recommend, especially for play by text. Now, there's other ones like Google Hangout and stuff like that you can use. It's up to you, but I like Discord just because you have the ability to kind of create little sub campaigns and a whole bunch of other different stuff. So that's kind of cool. Now, one of the things that I kind of allude to with Discord is voice. So you can play by voice, which again, it makes it more of a this is the kind of situation you would be in if you actually want to sit down and play a session, which is kind of what I'm sure a lot of you guys are kind of looking for. Now, voice, on the flip side of text, is a lot easier to tailor. It does require you to kind of play theater of the mind, and it's still free. So if you are interested in playing in a just strictly voice theater of the mind format, what you would do is that you would actually use something like a Discord or a Google Hangout or something like that. Even Skype can serve this purpose if you are just kind of looking to get in a minimal kind of way, and you can actually utilize voice to kind of just tell the story. Now, you won't be able to see the kind of reactions and stuff like that of your players, and for some people that can be a deal breaker when it comes to the immersiveness of the RP elements, so just kind of keep that in mind as you're going forward. But this is kind of a great way to kind of jump into at a very low barrier to play, because generally speaking, like, Discord's free, Skype is still free from my understanding, and a bunch of other different applications, Google Hangout and stuff like that, are still going to be free for you guys to use and still be very good and viable options to have good, crisp, clean voice, with the limits of your microphone, of course. I mean, not everyone has a lapel mic or something like that on them. A lot of people, like, I play still with my like headset mic from my old PlayStation. Whatever works, it still works. It allows me to hear everything in my ears and not have 16 different wires coming out, because it is a wireless headset. It's all kind of up to you. Now, the next kind of stage that we're going to talk about is actually playing voice and video. So I typically recommend, no matter what kind of program you're going to do beyond, once you start doing video, you're going to want to kind of stick with one particular video software, because after this level, the video services by some of the upper tier kind of virtual tabletops aren't the greatest in the world. They're okay. Not to get too far ahead of it, but Roll20 has a kind of voice video, but it's not great. Discord's video isn't that great. That's why I kind of only recommend for voice-based games. So if you're going to integrate that into maybe a online tabletop as well, and you're just going to want voice, Discord's kind of the way you go there. But if you want voice and video, my recommendations generally are going to be a Skype, a Google Hangout, or a Zoom. Now, I personally like Zoom a lot more because it's just a much cleaner interface. They've done a really good job of kind of optimizing the ability to kind of have those online to have those kind of online interactions with that kind of interface, with having video and stuff like that. The latency is very minimal. It's actually a really good way to do it. So that's my personal favorite. Now for Zoom, typically, if you're gonna be in a group beyond, I wanna say it's like 3 or 4, check Zoom's website. I'll put links for all these different applications and stuff down below. There's a limitation to how many people you can have in one particular phone call or Zoom call, as far as how long the actual call can be. They usually limit it to 45 minutes, I wanna say, depending on how many people are in it. So somebody may wanna have to fork that over, but in some cases, and actually a lot of cases, a lot of people have work accounts. Maybe that's you, maybe that's not. But if you do, hey, you already kind of have you are kind of got a get out of jail free card there by having that account. So it kind of works out really great for you if you already have that. But for some people, it might cost them a little money. I want to say, if we actually jump over here, we can actually figure that out real fast. Now I'm going to actually jump in here and do other stuff too as we're kind of going through this. So we're actually going to jump into Roll20 at one point. But for Zoom, I want to say that the general cost, we'll just jump in here, plans and pricing. It's $14.99 a month for a host. So it's not terrible. I mean, there are cheaper ones out there. Like I said, unlimited one-on-one meetings up to 40 minutes. So 40-minute limit on group meetings. So that's something to kind of consider. That's why I also recommend if you really, really need to play for free, then I would recommend jumping into something like a Skype or let me get that thing, or a Google Hangout, as far as that's kind of concerned. Now, the next stage that you kind of probably already saw, as I've kind of alluded to a few times already, is going to be Roll20. So we'll actually jump back over the computer again. I don't know why I jumped out, but we did. So sue me. That's what happened. And so Roll20 is kind of a really great interface to kind of utilize, especially if you're looking to play for free and utilize a virtual tabletop. Now, I actually utilize Roll20 for my personal home game because we kind of are in that stage of like we've been playing online mainly because of COVID-19 and having to have that kind of flexibility to be able to have to play not in person. So we've been kind of playing. All you have to do is create an account. You'll be able to create your own games, utilize the different interfaces. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of games you can play in. You actually have the option of pretty much everything, believe it or not, in here. And in fact, if we actually go in here, excuse the stutter. I always stutter every once in a while, but I don't know, nerves, maybe, I don't know. So if we go into create new game, it's actually really nice because you can actually come down here and pick optional character sheets, and there's character sheets for days in here, depending on what kind of game system you want to play. Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, Heart Beneath the City, Hero Clicks, Icons, whatever it is. There's a ton of different games in here that you can play for Roll20, and it's free. Now, it's free to an extent. Like, for example, if we come here and we actually go to... it's always hard. They have a memberships page that is always really hard to find. But you can manage your subscriptions, and basically, let's actually do that while we're sitting here, because I am here at the computer. Might as well, right? Roll20 subscriptions, is it worth it? We'll see. So when we're talking about things that are going to cost you money, so Roll20 is one of those things if you decide to go beyond the free package. Now, the free package does give you a few things. It gives you 100 megabytes of upload storage. You get compendium sharing. You get looking for group for 2 listings. It's kind of nice. And compendium sharing would be if you have any assets that you purchased in Roll20 and you want to kind of port those over into the game, and you'll be able to share it with 5 players in that one game. So basically, if you have assets in Roll20, like say if you bought the D&D 5th edition Player's Handbook, you'll be able to share that with 5 players in one of your games. So that's basically kind of how it works. And then if you want any more than that, then you need a subscription. So that's kind of why actually I've jumped over here into this particularly, and that's where we're gonna kind of be in the computer the rest of the way through for the rest of this video. So If you guys are okay with that little tiny screen of me up in the, I'm making a motion of the tiny screen when I'm in the tiny screen. Makes a lot of sense. Up in that top left-hand corner. Then sorry, but this is kind of the way we're going to go, is just because I want to kind of give you guys a look at what the interfaces are like. So if you look here for Roll20, you have the Plus and the Pro subscriptions for $50 and $90 and $100 a year, basically, I mean 99 cents, whatever. And you get more games, you get more compendium sharing, etc., etc. Each virtual tabletop's got its own kind of price points and their own kind of doodads and doohickeys that kind of work for them. So my recommendation is to make sure you check out and kind of do your own kind of homework and assessment to figure out what's going to be best for you. Like I said, for some people, playing for free, that's going to be the priority, which if you're going to play for free and you need a virtual tabletop, Roll20 is going to be that for you. If you want something beyond that, consider some of the other ones, because some of the other ones have different aspects that can work or may not work for your game, and depending on how you want it to kind of look, it could be a huge thing for you. So, for example, we'll just jump into my Dragon War campaign for my home game, just to kind of give you a look at the interface, just so you guys can kind of see it. It's very basic. There's a chat box over here on the right. There's a listing here for, there's a journal up here once it gets a chance to load. Now, Roll20 is loaded onto Roll20 servers, and it's all hosted there on the server, so just something to keep in mind as you're kind of going through there. So sometimes when they get a little bit busy, it gets a little bit bogged down. You do have a place to kind of upload your own assets. You have a journal tab for monsters, NPCs, your own the characters and stuff like that. You do have the compendiums for 5th edition if you decide to use 5th edition character sheet, like kind of how I showed you in that thing, anything in there. You've got a jukebox, you've got some macros you can kind of make, so if you want to have, whisper to a specific person, you can. There's a bunch of different things you can do in here, and you get your settings. So, and it works pretty well. You are able to kind of load in your maps. You have to do some finagling to get the maps to work and kind of fit, but it's a good option for people. The next one that I want to kind of talk about is Fantasy Grounds. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to jump out of the game here, but we're going to go to the Fantasy Grounds website, just because, not fantasy name generators. Not that I need to utilize that all the time. And right now I'm going to show you guys Unity, just because that's kind of what I've downloaded, because I've been kind of playing around with that, because I just kind of want to see how it kind of looks as it gets out of beta. But right now, basically one-on-one games, kind of like what we talked about with the Zoom calls. If you're doing one-on-one, you have the ability to play one-on-one games for free over there on Fantasy Grounds. So if you're going to have a one-player party, it works for you. If you need anything beyond that, you're going to have to pay money. So that's just something to keep in mind. You can buy, there's a couple different options. So I'm going to skip around a little bit, so just keep that in mind. One-time pricing for Fantasy Grounds, $35.10 right now, because it's still in beta for Fantasy Grounds Unity. And then for one-time pricing that's for the standard edition, so keep that in mind. For Ultimate, you're going to pay $134.10, and these pricings are actually what they would be for classic Fantasy Grounds. Fantasy Grounds Unity is still in beta. They're kind of working on trying to make it a bit more optimized, but things to keep in mind. If you have only a standard account, pretty much you can only host games and play in games with other standard players or players with Ultimate accounts. If you want to be able to kind of just like be the one guy, be the forever DM, Ultimate account's going to work out best for you, because then anybody can play no matter what they're using. If they're on a demo account or a standard account, it doesn't matter. So just keep that in mind. And there's a bunch of different rule sets. You can see them all here: 2E, 3.5, 4E, 5E, Fate Core, Pathfinder RPG, Pathfinder RPG 2nd edition, Numenaria, and the Starfinder RPG as well. So it's got all those data libraries in there. So for some people, it's going to work out well for you. For some, and others, it's not. But to give you kind of an overlook of the system, this is what it looks like. I've actually got the player's handbook in here, but you can, again, buy assets for this, and same kind of thing with Roll20. Now, the one thing that is kind of tricky is that if you buy assets in Roll20, they don't transfer over to Fantasy Grounds. So you kind of have to, it stinks, but you kind of have to pick one and stick with it if you're going to kind of go with that. So again, do your homework. Make sure you check out the demos and stuff like that. Make sure you kind of invest that time, research, look into these a little bit, because if you do decide to pay money, you kind of are stuck with it if you decide to then buy any assets on top of it. So just keep that in mind. That's why sometimes it's actually good to go with the subscription prices that you saw at $3.99, $9.99 respectively per month, just so you can kind of get a feel of it. If you don't like it, boot it, get something else. So again, very similar organization. You get your PCs, you can actually jump in here, see the character sheets, kind of like we saw over there in Roll20. This is actually the PC creation screen, so you actually can look at backgrounds, classes, items, all that kind of stuff. Everything's kind of loaded in here, so we jump into spells. Again, it is in beta, so sometimes it takes a little while to load. It actually did pretty quickly there. It's got all the spells here, really nice. It's actually a really good system. I like it. It works really well. Dice rolling is really cool. I just love the animation of the dice on the screen. I rolled natural 1 because, of course, this is the take of the video, the one take of the video. I'm going to roll a natural 1, of course. That being said, the next thing we're going to jump into actually is going to be Foundry Virtual Tabletop. So Foundry Virtual Tabletop is one of the newest players to the game. It's a very interesting entry to the game, actually. So let's actually bring that up now. I've actually got some stuff loaded up in here, and if you've ever watched any of my videos about Foundry or anything like that, like the different tutorials and stuff like that, you know that I probably I like Foundry Virtual Tabletop quite a bit. I don't know if it's FoundryDTT. It is FoundryDTT.com. Good. I'm taking this all in one take. You'd hope that I would get it right the first time. But like I said, Foundry Virtual Tabletop, it's a newer player to the game. Right now, it's $50 to get a license in order to be able to use it. There is no demo right now, unfortunately, so that's kind of a stinky situation, but it's very good software, and you're gonna have to just kind of take people's word for it. A lot of people are raving about it because there's a lot of really cool stuff about it. So where Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds are kind of owned by their own one individual company, Foundry is its own company, but they actually take a lot of input from the community, and there's a lot of community-driven modules and systems that are actually added into that you can add into the software to really enhance your experience and kind of tailor it to the way you want it to be. So if you're someone that likes the way the Fantasy Grounds puts things up, but you don't like a certain aspect about it, like if the map making tools are just kind of weird for you and you don't understand, I mean, I have a tutorial, so check that out. But if it's still too complicated for you, Foundry might be your option because there's a lot of ways that it can be really simple. Maybe you want a cooler looking interface than what you get with Roll20 because Roll20 is kind of vanilla and it's kind of made for every single game for the virtual tabletop space, not specifically Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder or whatever. Again, Fantasy Grounds, maybe Foundry's for you. But with Foundry, like I said, you can customize things the way you want them to be. So one of the cool things that they have is these modules. So if we come into the modules, and if we just say add-on modules, there's some game systems and stuff like that. And I'll actually show you the game systems here in a second. But all of these are approved modules that have been created by the community for the system. So in a sense, it's kind of always updating. It's still technically in beta, but it's a really good finished product that's got a lot of these add-ons that you can actually add. So I actually have created and put in a dice roller that actually exists. It's Dice So Nice. It's in here somewhere, and I actually did a video about that too on how to bring in modules. So you can actually bring in roll tables. You can have better ambient lighting or ambient music. There's a music sampler. There's a quest log. There's there's a bunch of other tables. There's chat images, lazy money. There's all kinds of different things that are basically here to make you and your players' lives a lot easier. There's also something very interesting. So they actually have integration, and Roll20 does too, because through a Chrome extension, and a Firefox extension, which is very interesting. But Foundry Virtual Tabletop, in addition to Roll20, has this integration with something that's called Beyond 20. But not only do they have Beyond 20, which I'll explain in a second, they also have another one, which I'm not going to find on the list right now, but we're just going to jump into my game because I have it loaded in here. That is actually called, if I go into my modules, it is called Virtual Tabletop Assets Beyond 20 Integration, or D&D Beyond Integration. So basically what this means, if you're somebody who used to play at home and had all of your money thrown into online assets and D&D Beyond so you could play on your iPads and all that kind of stuff, and now you're playing on your computer, but now you kind of are just like rolling on D&D Beyond and then playing in Roll20 or something else, and like you want those roles to integrate, or maybe you have like the monster manual or something else, like a very big compendium of monsters if you're the dungeon master, and you don't have to hand put every single monster in like you have to do in, say, a Roll20 or a Fantasy Grounds. You actually have the ability through this virtual tabletop assets extension to bring monsters in. And I've actually done that. I might have deleted it already. It's a very possibility. No, I did not. So I've actually brought in the Goblin. I was able to bring the Goblin in from the basic rules technically, but if the Goblin from the monster manual, and I was able to bring it in here through that extension. I will have a tutorial on how to do this later on in the future, but it basically allows you, if you have things from Mordenkainen's, if you have other assets from, say, Storm King's Thunder, or any kind of those other different systems, adventure modules, you'll be able to bring them in, which is really kind of amazing because none of the other systems really have that flexibility to kind of be cross-platform applicable. If you're using Fantasy Grounds, you're pretty much stuck to using Fantasy Grounds, and if you try to play it and port it back into person, you as the Dungeon Master can use it on your computer, but you're not going to expect your players to all have Fantasy Grounds open on their computer in front of you and do all virtual dice rolling and stuff like that. And not only that, like the the amazingness that is D&D Beyond, that allows you to kind of also manage your campaigns and also throw items in different people's inventories and kind of move stuff around and like give people certain things and different like boons and stuff like that, where the other virtual tabletops have, but then it kind of is limited to like only playing in that virtual tabletop space. Once you get to the actual table, that kind of mystery is kind of gone, because you can't kind of like, as a dungeon master, kind of play around with that kind of stuff. But having D&D Beyond integration, being able to kind of utilize and have those systems be kind of cross-platform applicable, is kind of amazing, actually, honestly. And I think, if I'm looking here, I think I got through everything that I want to talk about today. We talked about how to play D&D via text method. We're actually going to jump out of here. Oop, not that one. There we go. We talked about how to play D&D via play by text. We talked about how to play by voice. I didn't talk about theater of the mind, so theater of the mind, you kind of have to visualize, and the best way that I could describe on how to do that is to basically pick a distance. So I usually do everything in increments of 30, because when it comes to like positioning on battlefield and stuff like that, because basically it means you're 30 feet away, so you're one move away, because most player characters move 30 feet. So it just makes your life a little bit easier. Now monks will make your life difficult, but everyone else will move 30 feet, so it just makes your life simpler if you just kind of go that way. But like I said, we kind of went through everything. We went through play by post, we went through play by voice, play by video event voice. We talked about the virtual tabletops, free ways to play with virtual tabletops, paid versions of virtual tabletops. There's a lot of different options, but at the end of the day, like I was kind of saying, it is up to you to kind of decide what's going to work for you and your game and at your table. So just keep that in mind. But again, the whole point of this is so that way we can continue to play this awesome game no matter what happens in the world, whether or not we're being stuck in quarantine, or if you just kind of want to scratch that itch that is playing Dungeons & Dragons all the time. I kind of have that itch, and I'm always kind of playing around and messing with my games and prepping and all that kind of stuff. And part of the reason why this channel exists is because, like, A, I love the game, but also because I want to be able to teach you guys how to utilize these things and actually kind of do stuff and be able to continue to play this amazing game. I mean, it just makes the most sense to me. Now, if you guys have any questions, this has been a very long video and been very professional, unlike most of my other videos. But if you do have any questions, make sure you go down there into that comment section and leave a comment there. There's a lot of different things I can also help you out with. And I have a Twitch stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Link for that Twitch stream is going to be down in that description of the video, down there. And there we actually talk about a lot of this kind of stuff. We talk about Dungeons & Dragons, virtual tabletops, game prep, methodologies, and kind of coming up with good villains, how to kind of create story notes, how to prepare for sessions, how to prepare a story that is flexible, that continues to kind of play on different themes and tropes, so that way you can kind of be flexible, and like every story is about as good as it is until it gets to the table. So it's always going to be different because the players are the ones that the story is about at the end of the day. So having just these kind of like different triggers to be able to be available for your players, and how to kind of set those things in motion for your players to discover, and how to kind of adapt as they kind of mess with your world, is kind of what we like to talk about down there in the live stream. So make sure you check that out. Now, long video. I hope you guys learned something today. I hope you guys are all staying safe, and I hope this is a great break up to your hump day on Wednesday. But until next time, happy gaming.